My fellow Ambazonians, good morning. This is Dr. Cho Ayaba. Um, Yesterday, I was supposed to make a statement, but there were just too many security issues that stopped me from doing so. I I thought it was important for me to bring all of you to a certain level of understanding, and that will eventually shape the way we look at our struggle. I wrote a little piece yesterday about the issue of stalemate. Stalemate, and for the ordinary Ambazonians, is like in a football match you call a draw. The international community says the war in Ambazonia is in a stalemate. I disagree very strongly. This is a war between David and Goliath. This is a war between a people who have been in captivity for decades against a state that receives US support, French support, British support, support from the international system, multilateral organizations. This is a war between young men who are untrained, carrying AK-47, firing at helicopters and tanks. There is no draw between David and Goliath. Each time you hear of a draw between David and Goliath, you know David is winning. You have won this war. You have won this war. You must claim that victory. It begins with a belief, a strong belief that you have forever altered in an irreversible manner the relationship between Cameroon and Ambazonia. Their arrogance in the past 60 years has melted. All those they planted in our land in the names of chiefs, the middlemen and middlewomen in the names of elite senators, we have sent them into exile. Power is now in the hands of the Ambazonian people. How you deal with this power will be up to you. But I am very clear about what we should do with this power, how we should shape this power, how we should transform this power into opportunities. Each time in a war of liberation, where the enemy moves from believing in its power, in guns, in its authority, in colonial DOs and SDOs and chiefs, and turn into propaganda, it has lost. It has lost. It has been confused about the cosmetic measures it has put in place for 60 years that it used to destroy the Munas, the Fonchas, it used to destroy the John Frundis, the Elads, the Munzos. All those have not worked. The break out, break in enticement approach, where they believe that we were breaking out because we wanted an enticement to break back in, has not worked. They are faced with a reality they are not prepared for. And in every nook and cranny in which you are, take over your space and begin to implement and institute communal approaches to local governance. La Republique is not coming back. They can hide in armored cars. They can murder our people, murder our soldiers. But political occupation of Cameroon over Ambazonia has come to an end. Their enemy forces can hide in armored cars and barracks and set up checkpoints wearing bulletproof. We will kill them until they leave. Everybody has to know this. there will be no compromise, no middle ground until they evacuate the Ambazonian territory. Now, you must also understand the greater obstacle we face after the demise of political occupation are Ambazonian agitators and what I call the weaver birds. You must know what is going on. All through this struggle, or all through struggles of liberation, the international system and the opponent have always tried to use moderates to undermine strong nationalist position that will forever create justice. The case of South Africa is clear. We saw it in Indonesia using West Timorese to undermine East Timorese resistance. We've seen it in other countries. Ambazonia will not be different. We have watched in the past 7 years so-called Ambazonian leaders and weaver birds on social media. They have manipulated our people. They have blackmailed in the name of Cameroon. Everything they have done has been to serve Cameroon. It is not a disagreement between the nationalists and the conformists. There is no disagreement. They want to be put in a position of authority to inadvertently derail our struggle. That is what has been happening in the past 7 years. For anybody who understands parliamentary democratic rules, you will know that those who feel they are in the majority and need alliances to give them the portfolio of governance make simple compromises. We saw it in Germany between the SPD and the Green Party, where the SPD had the possibility of forming a government but need a coalition. It negotiated environmental policies, it negotiated economic policies, it negotiated structural policies, it negotiated power sharing. Joschka Fischer, I remember, long became the foreign minister, and the minister of environment came from the Green Party. Those are the kind of pragmatic compromises that people make in order to take power. In all liberation wars, you've seen that. We saw it in the Palestinian struggle. The PLO is a formation of different groups that came together to form the Palestinian Liberation Organization. The Eritrean Liberation Front is also an amalgamation of smaller groups. In Ambazonia, those who felt entitled to power could not make even the simplest of compromises. Why? Because the enemy was dictating the terms from behind. We now know for fact that John Frundi and Bandam had offered one of the IGs whopping amount of money. Bandam himself said it. I have not usually come out to confirm these things because of the nature of our struggle. John Frundi and Bandam provided large amount of money. Their sole aim was to destroy the ADF because they saw the ADF as an uncompromising, a force you cannot infiltrate, a force with a visionary political organization over it. And they knew if they destroy the ADF, it will be possible for them to be power brokers with the Yaoundé government. That is the reason John Frundi and Bandam worked so hard to see if they could either infiltrate the ADF or destroy it. They used the IG of the Sakos to see how they could replace the ADF in Momo. It did not work. They tried to kill ADF forces. They could not finish them because the ADF is a spirit. We also know for fact that the Ayub Tabi Front has also immersed itself collaborating with the Kamto factions And we know they have also received financial support from the Kamto factions. We have details on how these things have worked. The reason why they cannot make any compromise is because the terms are being dictated by others. They know any compromise with the Ambazonian Governing Council will change them from being conformists to nationalists, and it will not serve the interests of the piper. The pipers have been the Cambazonians, the SDF, and the Kamto factions that have injected money into these formations. We know for fact the CDC injection. Those are not monies given without conditions. We know for fact that these so-called individuals and groups have now used social media activists as a platform to undermine the nationalist front. We know for fact that there is the other IG which is working very closely with John Gute. That we know for fact. They cannot want us to collaborate because their pipers do not want them to sing the nationalist song. So when you hear these attacks on our forces, when you hear this denigration, when you hear this public attempt to discredit the Ambazonian resistance, even when we have made these gains, it is because of external influence. The international community has also been part of it. We know for fact that during the Swiss process, they worked very hard to use the IGs of the SACOs to undermine the nationalists because they believed they could use the path of the SACOs to find a compromise that keeps Cameroon as one. We know for fact that during the talks in Canada, before then even, Yaoundé tried directly to use the Ayoktabe faction also to strike deals. Their aim is to be able to use the conformists to build a sense to show that the AGOVc and Ayaba are extremists. Because what they call compromise is one Cameroon. You've also heard the weaver bird that was bought over in Canada making a lot of noise about compromise. Is capitulation. You will continue to see these things. We know the hand of the international community involved. We have the facts. In diplomatic meetings, questions have been raised that you see exactly where those questions are coming from. The strategy in the past 7 years. My apologies. You know, we are at war. Anytime the commander-in-chief can receive a call. I don't know where I ended, but this is just what I like every Ambazonian to know. Liberation wars are very complex. We call them a disruption to a state of things that have existed and perceived as normal. They are a threat to alliances that have been built, transactions that are to be made, understandings that have been agreed to. A liberation war is not changing a government. You change a government of a country, the new government is bound by treaties and rules and laws and practices of the old. You liberate a country is a new dynamic. That's why occupiers fight to the bitter end. And we have a very cunning occupying nation that believes more in violence and corruption. It's so complex that even those involved in it can be corrupted without knowing. It requires a lot of experience. The foundation of your involvement must be based on an ideological standpoint and a national belief in your own homeland. You must be aware of baits. We have seen in this struggle how errand boys, Ambazonian traitors from Cameroon, the early Smiths that have gone round in the name of trying to bring Ambazonians together when they were doing the bidding of the enemy. We have seen those things. The greatest threat to leadership in liberation wars is access. Even in normal governance structure. That is why if somebody is a president, having access to them is made very difficult, because they can be subject to corruption, because they are humans. And the greatest threat to the Ambazonian war has been access given by these so-called leaders who have elevated themselves to kings. They have been so vulnerable. They have surrounded themselves with opportunists. We walked in Boya with people like Nick Santos, who were traitors. They betrayed students. They became part of the youth wing of the CPDM. When they joined this struggle, we informed those who recruited them. They took these traitors and put them in their highest positions. They were not careful. The other traitor that left the AGOVc, when we had noticed long ago that he had the barrier around him had been breached, we watch, we observe, and when the resignation came in, there was no hesitation. And we have remained firm. And so, what Ambazonians have to understand is what I said at the beginning of this struggle. A liberation war is not chewing gum. It's not a walk in a park. It requires ultimate sacrifice from those who prosecute it, a change in lifestyle. You must not be too reactionary. You must safeguard the interests of the liberation. That means even if I find an Ambazonian prosecuting a particular strategy that I disagree with the scope, but I know it's going to negatively impact the enemy and does not undermine the cohesion, I am going to shut up. If I do not understand the depth of why people act in a particular way, I have no reason to go on social media. Discipline is required in a liberation war. Because talkativeness, ranting every day, even in good faith, you do the bidding for the enemy. I will not compromise. I just want to make every Ambazonian listening to me to know I will not make any. If you are expecting that you can shout my name 100 years, I will not compromise. I'm a veteran against Yaoundé. Yaoundé does not compromise even on GCE board, how Ambazonian universities, whether teachers talk about reforming our educational system, whether lawyers talk about what they want in our court, Yaoundé does not compromise. I will not make any compromise with Yaoundé as far as the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and independence of Ambazonia is concerned. It is a fight to my death. If you people all want to compromise, I will die in exile. For me, it is a fight to the death. Whether you scream 100 times, whether you say what, you don't know what you are talking about. You buy guns and rockets, then we are on the same page. Those who have given their blood have not given it in vain. Those who have been locked up for years in small spaces were not locked up in vain. we must adopt extreme measures if we want to survive. All this talk around is noise making. We are not also going to become politicians hugging babies and kissing babies. No, there will be pain on our people. This pain is not as a result of our resistance. This pain is a consequence of the occupation. You listen to enemy propaganda that Ambazonian forces have done this, have done that. You don't ask yourself who burnt your villages, who keep massacre in 150 places, who has created hundreds of thousands of refugees and IDPs. It's not Ambazonian forces. So if you've been manipulated, being intoxicated on a daily basis to blame the defenders of your freedom because of their little mistakes, you are doing the begging for the enemy. This is not a war only for the Ambazonian forces. It's a war for the 8 million Ambazonians. Everywhere you are, in church, in the high sea, on land, in your farm, you are a liberation fighter. To sit and be complaining left and complaining right as though somebody is working in your cocoa farm is a big mistake. These guys have done their utmost best. It's a collective endeavor. And so I conclude this morning statement by letting you people know the enemy will do everything possible to recruit our own to speak for them and create the sense of we are divided, we are confused. We aren't confused. They are confused. Whether they want provinces, they want region, special status, bilingualism commission, international negotiation, whatever they want, they don't know. We want them to get the hell out of our land. However we deal with our internal dynamics is a cup of tea. And so if you're listening to me, you don't have a rifle in your house, buy one. If you are listening to me, you haven't paid your tax, pay it for us to provide you a rifle. This is not only a war to liberate ourselves, it's a war for our own very survival.